Welcome to the August Microsoft Teams community call. Today we have Esha, Aarthi, and Zoe to present on the new Microsoft Teams Shift features to build richer first-line worker experiences. And I will let Zoe go ahead and introduce herself and get started.
Yeah, hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the product marketer for Teams for Firstline Workers. I'll let Esha and Aarthi introduce themselves real quick, and then we can dive in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Esha. I am a product manager on the Shifts app within Microsoft Teams, and I primarily focus on user experience items as well as what you'll see today around Power Automate. Aarthi, do you want to take it over?
Yeah, hi. This is Aarthi. I am a product manager for Shifts as well, and primarily focusing on enterprise adoption, APIs, integrations, and so I'll walk you through some of the capabilities we have there today.
Perfect. So as we dive a little bit deeper, the first key thing to know and to understand is, who are first-line workers? And they're essentially the backbone of a lot of industries, whether it's retail, manufacturing, whether it's healthcare, transportation, construction. They're the people who are first with your product, first with your customers, and often the first to represent your brand. They're the store associate on the floor, the essential worker in hospitals, the people who are keeping the economy up and running, and people who are oftentimes behind the scenes in terms of how things are getting done. They face a lot of issues with their technology. It can be outdated, something as simple as a clipboard and paper still. It's very fragmented because there's usually multiple systems, if they have any, to try to make sure that they're doing their work. And it's complex. A lot of times what they need to do are things that need to go all the way back up to corporate. But in order to get it there, it requires a lot of manual steps and a lot of time. So less than 25% have indicated that they do have the right technology, which leads a large portion of people who are actually under taken care of with their technology right now. Our general vision in Microsoft Teams is this idea of creating a hub experience. Today, we're going to generally focus on these top two, what we think are some of the most important experiences for a first-line worker. The first is that there's this hub app, this ability for a one-stop shop within Microsoft Teams. So first-line workers only need one application to do everything that they need to do in their job, decreasing that fragmentation, no longer having siloed platforms trying to work together. The second is about schedule management. These workers are shift-based workers. They, unlike you and I, where we probably live out of our calendars, they live out of their shifts, and trying to make sure that everyone's at the right location, they're clocking in. A lot of this actually takes way more time than it should and takes away in the end from the job that they really should be focusing on. And so today we'll be focusing on the shift features and what's out there to be built. Just to give a brief background on what we have in terms of shifts, these are again some issues of why shifts is a problem right now. That antiquated way, whether it's a calendar or a whiteboard, it takes a really long time for managers to get shift schedules up and out. And frankly, clocking in and out is very forgetful in general. What we have is an application within Teams called Shifts. It helps both managers easily plan and manage requests, time off, and swaps, as well as offers. It also gives employees more ownership over their own schedule, whether it's just viewing their upcoming shifts, see who else is kind of in that shift with them, or the ability to swap, offer, and pick up open shifts. So just giving them more control over what their shift and what their week looks like. And finally, we also have a time block natively integrated. It's both web, desktop, and on the app. And it really enables quick and easy clock in and out with geofencing capabilities to make sure that they're clocking in the right location. So here's our agenda today. Aarthi is going to talk through Shift Graph APIs. Esha is going to take over with Power Automate's integration shifts, and then we will have some time at the end to Q&A. But Dana, if we want to ask questions as we go, that's also totally fine. And so with that, I will hand it off to Aarthi.
Thanks, Zoe. So Shifts provides a ton of flexibility and extensibility for you to be able to build and customize your experience for your customers, whether you want to be able to integrate with a third-party system, a system of record, such as a workforce management system, or you want to pull data from the Shifts app and then build out a report, which can be used for business insights and analytics, or you just want to customize the workflow. Shifts provides a ton of Graph APIs to support that. Here I have just a sample of some of the APIs that we support, the entities that we support. The full list you can see on the public documentation. All of our APIs are GA. So some of the APIs that we provide are schedule groups, shifts. You can create open shifts, which is a concept where a manager has a lot of demand and has unfulfilled shifts that he needs to fill. So he can create these shifts, which are unfilled open shifts, and they're up for grabs by their employees. Employees can request time off. They can trade their shifts, swap, and offer their shifts to other employees. They can also set their own user preferences, as in their hours of work that they're available to be scheduled for, and then the manager can then use that to make a much more informed decision on who to schedule when. We also have a few APIs in the pipeline. We have the time clock APIs for our time clock capabilities within the Shifts app, and a way for you to extract information on the present status of an employee, whether they're on or off shift. All of our APIs support both read and write capabilities, as well as a two-way communication sync. And by that, I mean if you have another external system that you are integrating with, you can sign up or support a two-way synchronous change notification on those entities that you want. And the API that you would use for that is the Workforce Integration API. All of our APIs are GA. They're available in public clouds as well as government clouds and GCC. So here's a screenshot of the public graph documentation on the left. You would look under teamwork and shifts, and under that you're going to see a roster of all of the entities that we support. The last entity that you might be able to see if you squint a little is the Workforce Integration API, and that is the one that I was referring to be able to set up your integration, set up a callback URL, to be able to receive that real-time notification on any changes that happen on the Shift side. So we do support a Graph SDK for Shifts as well. So if you want to integrate through your libraries, that's another option. And you might be familiar with the Graph Explorer, which is a testbed Microsoft platform provides, where you can go in and play around with the API, see what the payloads look like, and test it out for yourself. So in addition to the Graph APIs themselves, which are an extension of the Shifts application, we also wanted to incorporate capabilities which make it super easy and seamless to integrate with these other workforce management systems, and specifically things like being smart about the swap scheduling. So Shifts also supports and honors any business rules that might be set in a third-party system, and only shows you employees who you are eligible to swap with. In addition to that, we also support error handling. So if your integration provides or throws an error, Shifts will then handle that gracefully and show that in a very user-friendly manner to the end user. So I've been talking about workforce integrations. On the top over here, you see a snapshot of some of the top workforce management systems out there that you might recognize. You might have customers who use these systems, but they may also be using other systems. So what we did is we went ahead and identified two of the top workforce management systems here, Kronos and Blue Yonder, which was previously known as JDA. And we build out-of-the-box integrations with Shifts and Kronos and Blue Yonder. So Kronos, it's WFC, and for Blue Yonder, it is 2017 and above. We have integrations out of the box that you can use, and they're open sourced on GitHub. So feel free to take a look at that if you want to just use it as a way to get started if you're building an integration with another system, or if you want to plug and play it and deploy it for a customer that uses these systems. And again, the workforce integration API is critical to have that two-way communication sync, which is what most customers really want, a way in which we can have this read and write back and forth seamless data flow between the two systems. So please make sure that you check out the workforce integration API itself. This is an example of the Kronos and Shifts integration. On the left-hand side is Kronos. The right is the web view of Shifts itself, as well as the Blue Yonder integration. And where you can find this is at GitHub. The repo is office.dev/Microsoft Teams Shifts Workforce Management Connectors. And with that, I hand it back to you, Zoe, unless there are any questions that I can answer.
There was one question about time clock APIs and whether or not those are in the works.
Yes, those are in the works. So they will be coming out in a month or two.
Perfect. So look for that announcement.
All right, I guess I will take it from here. I'll be talking today about Power Automate and Shifts. And this feature kind of came because there was a strong desire and need for automation based on the customer conversations we were having between Shifts and other applications. For example, a lot of the times we would get this question, hey, I am a manager, I have 500 employees, can I just auto approve all of those 500 requests all at once? I don't really want to go one by one. Something else that we heard very often was, hey, I kind of want to see my shifts in other calendars. For example, Outlook or my iCalendar, just something that, where I end up seeing most of my information, I can actually see shifts there as well. And finally, I'd like some sort of lightweight automatic reporting. Is there a way you guys can kind of send me a data report into Outlook or even Power BI and just kind of have something where I can look at? And all across these, we noticed that there was a string and need for automation, but also integration with other applications. And this kind of led us towards Power Automate. And just a brief primer in case anyone doesn't know, Power Automate is a Microsoft platform that connects you with the apps that you use the most for business processes that you notice in your company. So for example, if there is a business process that you use often with Microsoft Teams and Outlook, it'll automate that process so you don't have to keep doing it manually every single time, saving you time and money. And also recapping kind of how it works is the slide sort of shows you what a flow is. On the left side, I've kind of strung together a sentence. And on the right side, this is kind of, as a developer, what you would be doing in the Power Automate platform. So on the left side, you have some sort of trigger, which is, I guess, like something that will, a recurrence that will force you to do something. So we have every week. So that means every week something will happen. And you can string together your sentence so that every week the something that will happen is update my reporting of shifts in Excel. And that second part of the sentence is typically called an action. And when you string together your sentence of triggers and flows, or triggers and actions, you create a developer-made flow. Now, one trigger that's always there is what they call recurrence, which is time-based. So that means something will happen every 10 minutes, or something will happen every 20 minutes. And there are more types of triggers that you can have as well. Adding on to that, when you have a flow that is very usable, a lot of people end up having a similar use case to you, you end up creating something that can be templatized. And that leads us, when we see some top use cases or scenarios, to create a reusable template that any company can use without having to actually create the granularity of flows. And that's kind of what we announced initially at Build. So based on the great work that Aarthi was doing, we created shifts actions that are backed by our Graph APIs. And the goal for this is kind of what we were talking about earlier. Let's go ahead and string together a sentence of business processes you use most. What we are now in the process of building are trigger-based templates, which is kind of that second portion that I was talking about, where you just want a template that, is ready to go out of the box, where any company can kind of look at it for some of the top problems that I mentioned earlier. For example, integration with email, auto approval, and etc. All of these can be found today. Over here, it shows the Microsoft Teams app, but we recently created a Shifts connector. So you can find it within the Microsoft Teams for Shifts connector. And we have a huge amount of actions that are already GA and ready for you to use. Adding on to this, so Aarthi spoke about earlier about how you can access Shifts Graph API docs within, that link over there, as well as see a bunch of different areas on GitHub. For Power Automate, we noticed, especially with Back to Work, that there was a huge need to get some of this stuff earlier. And so a lot of the scenarios that I'm talking about in regards to auto approval or getting a Power BI template or seeing some of your shifts show up in a calendar, we've been able to put them all on a GitHub link. So if this is something that you can see yourselves use immediately, we already have them on GitHub, and we're working towards creating much more triggers, many more templates that can be used out of the box straight from the Power Automate platform itself. And finally, we do look at user voice. So I think the number one user voice item for Shifts today is integration with Outlook, which, looking at that user voice, this is, a feature that came directly out of it. Some of the other user voice items are, hey, can we have a Shifts connector and things like that. But we do look at it pretty often. So if you have any feedback, you have any questions or anything that you want, please, please, please let us know via user voice. We do look at it and we would love to, hear your feedback. And I will give it back to Zoe.
Before we get into Q&A, I'd like to open it up to my colleague Jake, who's going to take some time to go through gathering feedback for his Teams development experience.
Hey, everybody. So I'm Jake Freiberg. I'm a UX researcher in Developer Division. And you might know us from some of the tooling that we provide as far as Visual Studio IDE, Visual Studio Code, Azure tooling, pretty much anything developer related at Microsoft. We have some stake in it, and we're trying to make that better. And that definitely includes Teams. So right now we're investing heavily in improving the Teams development experience, but we really need your help to understand more about how we can do it correctly, how we can make it easier and faster. And so we'd really love to chat with you and get a better understanding of where you're coming from as a developer so that we can make that experience better. If you have just a minute, it's a very short survey, about a minute long. If you fill that out, aka.ms Teams Dev, you can sign up then to chat with us, and we'd really love to be able to talk with you and understand a little bit more about how we can make that experience better for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jake.
Please fill that out. The more feedback we get, the better it is, the easier we make it for all of you too. So it would be amazing if you all filled it out. And then questions. Prasad's asking if we could share the Shift API document URL. And just as a reminder, we will be posting the recording within a couple of days after this, along with a blog that will have a summary of what we've talked about and all the relevant links as well. But we will grab that link in just the next couple minutes and post that for you so you have it today. And then any questions regarding some of the shifts, things that we talked about? It's kind of an open forum at this point. So if you have questions about that or Teams development, the survey that they're asking you guys to fill out, we're happy to answer any questions For sure, we have the PMs available here, so I definitely would love for you guys to take advantage of that. Power Automate still needs many more triggers and actions in general to extend its usage for teams.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's definitely what we're working on building to make sure that we have triggers and actions with shifts. In regards, if this question is for Teams Up in general, I know that Teams itself is working on extending their capabilities as well.
Will there be an option to alert employees to like remind them on the Teams app itself? I know it does it on the phone, I believe, but on the Teams app on the desktop, like, hey, don't forget to clock in, or don't forget to clock out.
Yeah, exactly. We're actually in the process of creating parity to have those notifications show up on desktop web as well. We're starting out with kind of a select few, which is, updates of my shift or, when my shift is going to come, but we're working on expanding that too.
Okay. Because I know it's a hard habit to stay into.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Uh-huh.
Are you also interested primarily in the shift reminders?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, another question is, can you integrate rules and shifts? For example, we can configure union rules so when we create shifts, we are following collective agreements.
Yeah, I guess I can take this one. So today there isn't kind of a way to create those rules and shifts, but you can integrate them. So Aarthi can probably speak to this more. Aarthi, let me know when you want to take over. But that's why we decided to pair with workforce management systems. We realized that companies all across the world really use their workforce management systems, and they have the breadth and capabilities of all of the rules with regulations, government, and company that you would need, but they're lacking a great communication tool to pair it. And so when we were thinking of this app as a whole, we were really working on, taking this workforce management tool that we know people will use. They've been using it for 40, 50 years, and finding a way that we can make communication easier, more secure, pair it with Teams, so you get the full breadth and everything of Teams. So definitely, when you're looking at shifts, look at it with a lens that, hey, what is the system of record I use today? And is there a way to kind of, use that system of record, and let's, use the open box items that Aarthi created so we can actually pair it with a workforce management tool.
Yeah, adding on to what Esha said, the way you want to think of it is when you integrate shifts with another system of record, the workforce management system becomes the system of record or the master of the data, and shifts acts as the system of engagement, shifts within teams. Like I mentioned earlier, shifts is smart enough to honor some of those rules on specific capabilities. So swap and offer are some of the features where via the APIs and the callbacks that the shift system will make, we can intelligently show to the user only those employees who I can swap with based on these rules that have been defined in the workforce management system. And we have deliberately ensured that the workforce management system stays that source of truth, that system of record, the one that's got all of these complex rules, because we could never potentially catch up in a year or two with all of these complex rules across different nations and countries. So Shifts is intelligent enough to understand some of these rules. You can also use APIs to be smart about customizing that workflow experience if you want. If you want to have automated approvals on open shift requests, for instance, or swap requests. We've seen system integrators be smart about how they circumvent that callback to the workforce management system and just auto approve it. So there are ways to work around that as well. If you're interested in specific scenarios and you want to learn more on how you can enable those, get in touch with me and I'll try to help you out.
And Aarthi, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
My alias, it's AAKU at Microsoft.com.
Another question was, is there any other visualization that will be available for use besides Power BI, like maybe Tableau or something like that?
For now, we've primarily focused on creating a Power BI template that we can use. But I will say that, if there is some magic you want to do with Power Automate to plug in Tableau and things like that, you can. But the one that we're focusing at least for V1 is to get at least Power BI in there, and then we'll kind of go from there depending on kind of the customer asks we get and more use cases.
Another question was, or comment, as the environment evolves, so will the Power Platform. We need to communicate issues and opportunities whenever possible. Microsoft needs to ensure that they respond to these issues and opportunities.
Yeah, I think we agree. I think Microsoft's responsiveness is always important, especially right now when we're going through such big fluctuations. So 100%, we're on the same page.
Thank you for that. I agree as well. Any news on arrival of specialist devices for first-line workers, such as tablets, phones?
I can take that. Yes, we are. Thus far, we've been working with Samsung very closely to have walkie-talkie, which is another feature in our lineup, integrated with their Xcover Pro. And so that's a really exciting component. We have some great headset partners that we've announced, like Blue Parrot and Klein. We also always have our amazing, the Surface team would kick me for not starting with them, but we have an amazing Surface lineup with Surface Go, so affordable tablet/laptop. And then we are working with wearables, whether it's HoloLens for something more creative or RealWear, which is a rugged helmet that allows field technicians or people out in manufacturing plants have hands-free communication. And so we have quite a few devices partners that are already out. I'll send a link to some of the announcements we've just made at Inspire. There's more to come later in the year, but this is a place that we're really leaning into to make sure that we have the right devices that work well with our technology.
Awesome. There was another question about the Graph API for time clock. So if anyone missed that, it is in the works and estimated to be released in the next couple of months. So you can look for that coming soon. And then another question is, when will we be able to add the Shifts app to a tab in the Teams channel?
Yeah, I can probably take that one. It's right now in the backlog, but it's something that I'm hearing more and more. So currently there aren't any plans, but it's definitely something that's top of mind. And with, making sure that, we have the full breadth of the APIs and other aspects like that, this is definitely something that we'd like to take up soon.
Awesome. There was another comment about the clock in, clock out that everyone seems to be very excited about. So we'll make sure you're all aware when that's coming out. We still have a little more time if anyone has more questions about Shifts, Graph APIs, Teams in general. One more question. Teams is available again for personal use?
For as a consumer, or is that personal use or personal use in the workplace? I think in terms of, I suppose, personal use, what comes to mind is for your own, in personal life rather than in work. And we do have Teams for Life that was recently announced, which has all the goodness of Teams, but made more for your personal life, for working with your family or your roommates or whoever.
Yeah, I think the goal would be to maybe replace the use of Zoom with Teams, especially for people that used a lot of Teams on a personal side.
Yes, yeah. So we're also launching, different versions of Teams, whether it's for personal, whether it's like a freemium version. So that is all coming down the line. We're hoping to also have better toggling between the two eventually, between your work and your personal. But yes, that is something that we have top of mind. Zoom is something we hear constantly externally, and so don't you worry. We are thinking about that, and we're thinking about how to make our UI better for whatever part of your life that you want to engage with teams in.
Awesome. All right, Ryan had another question about shifts. Can you delete an entire shift schedule so it doesn't show up anymore? And can you combine schedules or migrate them to a different schedule?
Hey Ryan, today you can't delete an entire schedule. It's not something that exists within the app today, mainly because we are very tied to Teams, so it's not there yet. And then in terms of migrating them to a different schedule, Aarthi, is there a way that you could take the shifts information from one to another via the APIs? I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, you can use the combined with the schedule and the shifts APIs. You can certainly use the APIs to pull information from one schedule and push into another.
So I do see a hand raised or it was raised.
And it just went away.
Yeah, it was me. My name is Inayat. I hope it's okay to talk. I don't know where to ask the questions, so I was looking for the options to chat. Maybe I might have missed this session. If it's okay to ask a question, my question is in Teams in general. We use Teams a lot for work and also for Teams Live for webinars and conferences. One of the important feature that we would like to have is the attendance feature for Teams Live, which was actually somehow working from the attendees list, but seems like recently you have made an option either join anonymously on a link or a Teams Live event or sign in. There's no option to join without a sign in or just to enter their name and sign in. So do you have a solution to that?
I think we can work offline. If you can send us that or type that question into the chat box, we can connect with our calling meetings and devices colleagues who are the subject matter experts in that area, and then we can kind of get back to that and put that response back into the blog when we kind of recap this.
Right. Thank you.
So I think I've got the gist of that. So in terms of the Teams Live events, there used to be the functionality where you could just put your name and get into the event that way, but now it's requiring you to either enter as an attendee or sign in. So you're just wondering if there's a solution to address the way where you were able to just enter into the name. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, I will follow up with the team separately on that, and then we will post what I find the answer solution to that back in the blog when we kind of do our recap.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, there is one more question. Is there any limit to the number of external users for a Teams meeting from Office 365 developer/business account?
I don't know if anyone on this call would know specifically about calling.
Yeah, I think that's another question. We can go back to our calling meetings and devices colleagues. So we'll follow up on that.
Because I'm not sure that it's external users specifically. I think it's just in general, there's caps on Teams calls, but we'll follow up with that for sure, just so you have the correct answer.
If I may answer that, if you don't mind, I think I've seen a blog from Microsoft community as well, stating that the limit was initially 150, and I think a couple of weeks ago it was increased to 300, be it internal or external. That's what the answer that I have from my recent reads earlier.
Right. So the total number was 250, and then they increased it to 300 a couple of months ago. But I don't know if that's specific to the external users. So a meeting like this, it could be both. But I'm not sure on the external side. I think there's a difference between the two. So yeah, we'll definitely follow up. While anyone else is still asking more questions, on the screen there has been a list of all of our Microsoft 365 developer calls that happen on a monthly basis. There are also a couple of SharePoint calls that are bi-weekly special interest groups specific to developer SharePoint framework. We have Power Apps, add-ins, this Teams call that happens every month, and then adaptive cards, graph, and identity platforms. So you can download any of the call series and join those, and they'll happen the same way as this call, where we have different agendas each month, and we post those agendas just a few days before the call on Twitter. But these are all downloadable calendar invites, so that you have it on your calendar as a reminder that will pop up for you. The main link for all of our developer events is that aka.ms WAC M365 dev calls. And while we're doing that, Christian had a question. If you create a Teams using Graph and after that add tabs to a channel, those tabs only show up after clicking around between message and file tabs. Is this something that will be fixed soon?
I want to understand the question, though. I might not be the right person to answer, but is there a discrepancy in the user experience when you create the team natively within Teams versus through Graph? Is that the question?
Yes, the problem only persists if you add tabs to a channel via Graph. These tabs don't show up right after you create them. You have to click around for some time and then they will show up. And that's a big problem for us.
That may be a question for the Graph team. So that's one we can also follow up on and get an answer for that. And then any other questions, we can follow up. There's 2 links on the screen now for developer documentation to help you through certain things. And then our developer feedback specific to Teams is aka.ms WAC Teams dev feedback. So you can feel free at any time to post questions there, and the Teams team will get responses to you. So thank you for joining. We'll stay on for a few more minutes in case anyone has any additional questions. The recording will be available in the next couple of days on our YouTube channel. And then you can also follow us on Twitter if you're not already doing that. It's at Microsoft 365 Dev. We post all of our Microsoft 365 developer announcements with regard to Teams and all of the other topic areas. So definitely follow us on that to get the latest news and announcements, events coming up, and everything else. And then our next call will be on September 15th at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Thank you all for joining today. We always appreciate it. And if you have any feedback about things you heard, you can also let us know that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys. That was a really great presentation.
And thank you. And thanks to all the presenters. It was awesome.
Bye, everyone.